I love The Simpsons. I basically have my entire life. Starting as a recurring sketch on The Tracey Ullman Show in the 80s and premiering as their own show for Fox on December 17, 1989, creator Matt Groening's animated sitcom has run for 37 seasons, 805 episodes, is the longest running show in TV history, and has been a source of controversy, a cultural phenomenon, an inspiration for countless shows, a launching pad for endless careers, and while the show has run long past its expiration date, its golden era is the source of some of the greatest episodes of television ever made. When I think of what makes The Simpsons so special, it's this blend of genius comedy, genuine emotion, and brilliant characters that all come together with these really unexpected stories to make something that is very uniquely The Simpsons. The best Simpsons episodes can be watched over and over again, and they never get old. In fact, you just appreciate them even more, because you begin to understand how they all work, and the ways in which all these different stories and bits of comedy and characters all come together. Plus, you get that warm and fuzzy feeling of being with the characters that you know and love. Now, decades removed from The Simpsons, I think that going back to its heyday makes me love it even more. And all these years later, there's one specific episode that stands as the greatest entry in the series. Season 4, Episode 17, Last Exit to Springfield. From its satirical story of labor rights and employee solidarity, to the massive amount of jokes that are among the show's best, to the touch of sincerity that brings it all together, let's look back at Last Exit to Springfield, the crowning achievement of The Simpsons. If you're anything like me, and I know I am, then you've memorized more Simpsons lines than you can count. You have all of your favorite side characters and lines burned into your brain. You've played all of the terrible Simpsons games, and you can remember which episode of the series was your favorite, when it was your favorite, and how that changed over time. And to me, that was all part of growing up just a little past the heyday of The Simpsons, but with its best episodes still in heavy rotation and syndication. Just a few of my favorites over the years were 22 short films about Springfield, 3 Men in a Comic Book, Burns Verkaufen der Kraftwerk, Marge vs. the Monorail, Cape Fear, Lemon of Troy, and a whole lot more. And it's no coincidence that so many of those come between seasons 2 and 8 of a show that's probably going to hit at least 4 decades of being on the air. But what makes this era of The Simpsons so special? Well, let's go back to the beginning for a minute. The Simpsons began as a series of animated shorts for The Tracey Ullman Show by Matt Groening after producer James L. Brooks brought him on board when he became a fan of Groening's comic strip Life in Hell. And soon afterward, The Simpsons, largely inspired by Groening's family, became its own show, with Brooks negotiating creative independence for the show from 20th Century Fox and creative supervisor Sam Simon coming on board for its first 4 seasons. And almost immediately, the show was a massive hit and a cultural phenomenon. And of course, The Simpsons is beloved for its central family and recurring city of characters, with Dan Castellaneta as Homer, Julie Kavner as Marge, Nancy Cartwright as Bart, Yeardley Smith as Lisa, and both Hank Azaria and Harry Shearer filling out most of the leads and supporting characters. These are the characters that, while they've evolved over the years, were mostly set in stone by the end of the second season. But what I really want to talk about is the writing of The Simpsons. Each of the early seasons would have about a dozen different writers as part of the show's writer's room, working under the showrunner and breaking each episode's story usually 6 to 9 months before they aired due to the time-consuming nature of animation. Usually a writer or two are assigned a story, usually one they came up with. Then 2 days are spent in the writer's room with the entire team helping to flesh out the episode with jokes, ideas, and character beats. This then becomes the outline, which is sent back to the writer's room for more jokes and changes, then a first draft, rewriting with the room, a read-through and animatic, and full voice recording. Cue completed animation done in Korea and a final polishing before it airs. That's a lot of work to get just a single episode right, with many different episodes being worked on simultaneously to keep the whole show running. It also shows how every episode at the show's peak was the product of many, many talented people contributing to every little detail. Of course, this takes a while to fully figure out, and if you ever go back and watch The Simpsons from the beginning, you can see how the ideas are all there, but the exact flavor of comedy and heart is still being worked on in Season 1 and Season 2. When talking about the show, people always talk about the golden age of The Simpsons. But when does that start exactly? Is that season 2? If so, it's probably not until Lisa's Substitute, which is pretty far into that season. And when does it end? Season 9 feels a lot more modern than season 8, so I would probably end it with the end of season 8. All to say, by the time season 4 rolled around, The Simpsons had everything in its right place. Sam Simon was still serving as creative supervisor. Groening had largely stepped back from the day-to-day creation, and writers Al Jean and Mike Reiss had graduated from writers to showrunners before eventually leaving to create The Critic. And that leads us to Last Exit to Springfield, which originally premiered on March 11th, 1993, and is the brainchild of co-writers Wally Wolodarski and Jay Kogan, director Mark Kirkland, and season 4 co-showrunners Reiss and Jean. Here, Mr. Burns' frustrations with the workers' union at the nuclear plant quickly leads to him trying to revoke their dental plan as payback for their demands. And when the union president has gone, missing, Homer is soon elected as the new leader of the union when he eventually realizes that losing his dental plan will mean he can't cover the cost of Lisa's new braces. This immediately puts Homer and Burns on a collision course that leads to a strike, with Homer both completely out of his depth and wanting to do right by his daughter. It's a pretty simple story, and it actually doesn't adhere to the common Simpsons formula of beginning with one story before turning into a completely different story by the end of the first act. Instead, Last Exit jumps straight into its main story by first establishing Mr. Burns' lifelong, old-timey hatred of unions, and then setting up the emotional reason for Homer's resistance. The result is a plot that has a lot of forward momentum that keeps up at the same pace as the rapid-fire jokes, and I absolutely love it. The story is very easy to understand, said Wolodarski. You keep your dental insurance, or Lisa will have horrible braces. Now you start to hang every last joke that you can on it. You never think about weighing heavy themes, though it does have one of my favorite themes, which is labor versus management. As a person who's in multiple Hollywood unions, I'm very much a labor person. So that was fun to put the labor message out into the world. As it's been the case for many years now, labor has been crushed every which way. It was fun to see labor as the hero. The really sly subversion of Last Exit, however, is that the union is immediately portrayed as crooked, and the chance for power and money is what motivates Homer at first, until his good heart takes over and pushes him to fight for a good cause. The power plant workers are lazy and ignorant, but they still deserve insurance and rights. As a rule of thumb, the average Springfield citizen is usually some combination of dumb, lazy, mean, and selfish. I have to give credit to Mike Reiss, who suggested the idea for the episode that Homer become union leader, said Jean. We were conscious of being very even-handed at the time. There were many more moderate Republicans, and there was a real sense, although I think many of the writers always leaned liberal, most of them, not all of them, that there was a sense that you wanted to respect both sides. Still, Mr. Byrne has always been a cartoonishly evil villain throughout The Simpsons. By this point, he'd already hit Bart with his car and temporarily sold the plant to the Germans, so having him as your capital C capitalist enemy is always going to make the moral choice clear. How Last Exit mines that conflict for comedy, with Homer as the working class hero whose mix of stupidity and morals make him immune to Burns' bribes, is the genius here. With Fox, as well as both Brooks and Groening being pretty hands-off with the show, the writers were able to make faster, crazier, more biting episodes. We weren't trying to please anyone above us, and we were just getting to do it the way we wanted to do it, said Reiss. We skew pretty liberal, but we always say, don't get your opinions from The Simpsons. And we don't want the show to be preachy. If we start advocating in one direction, we always want to show the other side of it. Al always used to say, it's not liberal, it's nihilistic. As far as the animation goes, Last Exit isn't doing anything spectacular, but its visual references and comedic pacing are super clean and well executed. These early seasons of The Simpsons have a lot of imperfections that come from mass producing the show overseas, but it's the recognizable style and ability to time out a gag that made the show immediately connect with audiences. Last Exit is also packed with references to pop culture and different defining moments of the last several years before this episode aired, but I don't think the comedy comes from you just simply recognizing what they're mentioning, which I think gets really old really fast. What I think the comedy in these references is actually coming from is how warped each of them are through the minds of the characters that are remembering them or the different circumstances in which they're happening. The McBain opening, part of an ongoing movie we see snippets of, is the most cliché of Arnold clichés that our family loves to watch. Lisa's laughing gas dream is a vision of Lucy in the sky with diamonds that turns dark. The braces scene is Batman's Joker reveal made darker because it's happening to a kid. Homer's vision of ultimate power is that of the Don that soon gets assassinated in The Godfather 2. Mr. Burns' top secret bunker is like Get Smart, only it's lacking in security in the worst area possible. Even the LA riots are an influence, with Springfield seen as just one power outage away from immediate violence. Having so many different ideas and trips inside characters' heads makes the episode somewhat surreal. Reality and our perception are constantly bending around the minds of different characters, and it makes this very grounded, everyday story become strange and subjective. All these references and ideas were something that showrunners Gene and Reese really pushed forward during their time on the show. Sometimes that was to pad out the runtime of a story that was too short for the allotted length. Sometimes it was to create shorthand for stories that needed to move along faster to fit the time. Here, I think Last Exit strikes a perfect balance between frenetic comedy and really well-paced story and character moments. And that alchemy creates an episode that's equal parts funny and touching, with the frenetic references slowing down in the second half to focus on Homer and Lisa's bond over the Union strike. Now that I think about it, is this where one battle after another got all its ideas? To me, the best episodes of The Simpsons need a true emotional core to them. You know, what makes The Simpsons great first and foremost is being funny. Obviously, this is a sitcom, and I always need these episodes to make me laugh in order to really enjoy them. But The Simpsons is also supposed to make you really care about these deeply flawed characters that just can't seem to get out of their own way or get past their own huge shortcomings. Some Simpsons episodes pull out this deep emotional wound and then just kind of laugh it off. Those episodes are fine, but not the greatest. But the best Simpsons episodes make you feel deep emotions that you wouldn't really expect from this type of show. Mother Simpson, with Homer finally reconnecting with his long-lost mom only to lose her again at the end, is a massive emotional blow. But it's so beautiful, and the show knows to just let you sit there with that as the credits roll. One of my favorite, deeply emotional episodes of the show is Round Springfield, where Lisa's jazz mentor Bleeding Gums Murphy dies in the hospital, leaving her to be the only one to mourn him and try to give him a lasting legacy. It's an incredible episode, one of the most straight-up dramatic and deeply personal episodes of the show, and no one talks about it enough. And here in Last Exit, Kogan, Wolodarski, Kirkland, and company put a very simple but important emotional core at the center of all the silliness and satire. Homer wants to do right by his daughter, and Lisa wants to be proud of her dad. A lot of this approach is credited to producer James L. Brooks, and while Brooks didn't have much of a hand in the day-to-day creation of the show, he definitely set it on a path to balancing emotional care with comedy. It's of a piece with many of the movies and shows he made himself. Terms of Endearment, Broadcast News, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Taxi. Stories where you begin to care deeply about the characters while you're also laughing at them. Tricky balance, but I think it's one that was well maintained throughout The Simpsons' golden age. The balance in Last Exit is found in the dynamic between Burns and Homer. On one side you have Mr. Burns, all head, no heart. In Homer, all heart, empty head. And in between them is Lisa, all head and all heart. And it's probably what makes her such a great character and the one who can spark change in every member of the family. And here I think that Homer is just the right balance of dumb. He is a lovable goof who just kinda floats through life, not the completely brain-dead tornado of disaster he would grow into. Of course, as seen in the 30-second inner monologue bit, which the writers had to fight to keep, we see just how much it takes to get Homer to realize something.
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
Dental plan!
And in the ensuing 15 minutes, Homer's obliviousness becomes a superpower. The battle comes down to this: what is labor truly worth, and how far are the rich willing to go to deny the rights of workers? It's all done in the silliest manner possible and taken to the biggest extremes, because of course this is a sitcom and it needs to be funny. After a disastrous debate on live TV, Burns shuts off power to the entire town, clearly the first step on a path that would lead to his son blocker in Who Shot Mr. Burns, forcing the striking union to decide on what's more important, your power or your rights. Like Reese said, it's all pretty nihilistic, but I've found that the nihilism of The Simpsons is always directed towards systems, governments, and businesses, but not individuals. Individuals, although flawed, are often redeemed by the end of an episode, but there's no hope for institutions. Homer's love for Lisa gives it all purpose, and Homer as a caring family man is something this series would return to over and over. What I love about this approach to parody in the workers' dispute is that while Burns is the villain to fight, the show is constantly taking him down a peg. His reasons are so petty they're pathetic. He's so feeble he could fall apart at any moment. His whimsical efforts to run the plant with Smithers can't last without his workforce. And he's ultimately nothing but hate and selfishness wrapped up in a very thin skin. Of course, the show doesn't actually say that. It illustrates it over and over again with its gags, and that's what makes it brilliant.
I'm beginning to think that Homer Simpson was not the brilliant tactician I thought he was.
Oh, and Bart? Well, he's not really doing all that much here. Bart is an agent of chaos in most stories that he's involved in, and I think this whole labor dispute would become too much of a parody if he was to get involved. The closest replacement is Grandpa Simpson and the old strike breakers who put on another time-consuming joke.
Give me 5 P's for a quarter, you'd say.
The resolution to it all is very simple. Very literally and very obviously rip off How the Grinch Stole Christmas. If what this episode is saying is that capitalism, labor, and even the well-being of an entire town is meaningless without love and family, Lisa and the protesters' song in the face of a total blackout is the lovely little button on that idea, and the one that brings the strike to an end. As far as the reputation of this being the greatest episode of The Simpsons ever made, that came as a total surprise to the crew of Last Exit, who saw this as just another episode that they made, not even the best one of season 4. About 15 seasons into the show, I saw USA Today had it ranked as the best of the first 300 episodes of The Simpsons, said Reese. And I called Jay Kogan and said, they picked your episode Last Exit to Springfield as the best episode ever. And he said, it wasn't even the best one we wrote that month. It was part of an assembly line. We never dwelled on it. Get that one done and on to the next one. I don't remember it being a standout at all during production or even after it went on the air. So for people to single it out even a few years later or talk about it after 25 years, it's always a surprise to me. I would also be proud because my name was on it and Wally's name was on it, said Kogan, and also be a little confused because so many great episodes came from that period of time on The Simpsons. Why this one? Why is this one better than the others? Maybe I'm too close to it. To be fair, Season 4 is incredible as a whole. Camp Krusty is Bart at his most anarchic. A Streetcar Named Marge balances skewering local theater with marital strife. Itchy and Scratchy the movie lets the writers run wild with every itchy idea they had. Mr. Plow, Selma's Choice, I Love Lisa, The Front, and Whacking Day all deserve a spot on the best episodes list. And a special shout out to Duffless, an episode that's all heart and made me rethink my relationship to alcohol. I would happily make videos on each of these episodes on their own, and as a whole, Season 4 is one of the most watched seasons in the show's history.
Daddy.
With most episodes averaging between 20 and 28 million viewers in their premiere, and Last Exit hitting 22.4 million viewers. We're thankfully past cultural cash-in moments like Do the Bartman and The Simpsons Sing the Blues, but the show was more of a powerhouse than ever. For comparison, most Simpsons episodes past season 30 average about 1 to 2 million viewers. So with so many eyes on season 4, it's no wonder why Last Exit gained such a stellar reputation. There were more people ready to talk about how great it was. So, is Last Exit actually the best episode of The Simpsons? Well, it might be, but the competition is pretty stiff, and I think it's neck and neck with a lot of episodes that were made from seasons 2 through 8. When you look at lists that rank the greatest Simpsons episodes, Last Exit is always at or near the top, and any episode that doesn't include it is usually dismissed by fans. But I also think episodes like Marge vs. the Monorail, also from season 4 and written by Conan O'Brien, ticks off essentially all the same boxes that make Last Exit so special. Lemon of Troy from season 6, written by Brent Forrester, is probably the last perfect episode of the Golden Era. And Treehouse of Horror 3 is easily the best of the Halloween series. Obviously, over the years, decades of so-so to bad seasons of The Simpsons have diluted the impact of the show, but for at least 7 seasons, The Simpsons was nearly perfect. In fact, the show has gone on for so long as a pretty mediocre franchise that it's almost come back around to making the Golden Age even more special. You can just ignore those dozens of bad seasons and focus on the truly great stuff, because no one thinks The Simpsons is going to get great again. In the end, having an episode like Last Exit to Springfield be declared as the best among so many truly wonderful episodes is a matter of degrees. There are a few more classic jokes than other episodes of the era. The references to other media have become a little more ingrained in pop culture. The character arcs are a little more meaningful. But the best thing about it is that it gives you the chance to see everything that made this show so special in just 23 minutes. If you've never watched much of The Simpsons, or it's been a long time since you really cared about the show, rewatching this episode can help you see what it's all about. And to me personally, going back and taking a long look at one of my favorite episodes has been an absolute joy. I really just love going into a work of genius, and this is genius, and pulling it apart to see how it all actually works, and the story behind how it was made, and then coming away and appreciating it even more. And like all the best episodes of the series, Last Exit to Springfield manages to capture both the beauty and absurdity of life. It's what makes this episode so special, and one that I've seen dozens of times, and will see dozens of times more. Thanks for watching today's video, and after so many years, I've finally done a video on The Simpsons. I have referenced The Simpsons a lot in other videos that I've done over the years, and like I said in this video, I've been a fan of the show since I was really young and was growing up basically post-heyday of The Simpsons, but really heavily focused on the Golden Age, so of course I became a huge fan. And as a child, I would often have a funny situation with The Simpsons where I loved it, and then because it was so controversial still at the time, it would be banned in my household, and then after a couple weeks it would be sort of soft unbanned, and I would go back to watching it all the time because it was playing Monday through Friday in syndication after school. Cue it being rebanned again a few months later, and the cycle would repeat. But in any case, I have been a huge fan of The Simpsons for so long. It has been pretty bad and unnecessary for decades, but that doesn't stop the greatest episodes of the show from being some of the best stuff that has ever been made for TV. Examining Last Exit was a lot of fun because this is one that is always at the top of the charts when it comes to lists about the greatest Simpsons episodes ever made, and I'm not entirely sure if it is the greatest episode or not, but it's easily one of the best. I would put it in any top 10 no matter what, like I've said in this video, along with some of my other choices that I mentioned. Everyone's favorite episode of The Simpsons is going to be a little bit different depending on their personal preference, or when they grew up, or what they prefer about the show. But Last Exit to me is one of those episodes that shows you everything great about The Simpsons and why it was special, and why it made such a huge impact on so many people for so long. I would love to hear your thoughts on Last Exit to Springfield, as well as your own picks for the greatest episodes of The Simpsons ever made, and maybe even what you hope for with this second Simpsons movie that is apparently coming out within the next few years. Maybe that will be the end of the show. It's got to end at some point, really. It really needs to come to an end. And maybe if the movie is great, and I thought the first Simpsons movie was solid, that could be a good way to end everything. So We will find out eventually. But there are plenty of amazing Simpsons episodes that are able to be rewatched over and over, and I never get tired of them, no matter how bad the show has gotten. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons and members for their continued support. And if you'd like to be a patron member, it's only $2 a month for early access to every video and exclusive reviews, with April's exclusive review being on The Exorcist 2. So until next time, I hope that you're taking care of yourselves and watching some great episodes of The Simpsons.